It looks like the road to getting this current Superman movie was a lot harder than we thought, but we're not out of the woods yet. According to a new article by the Wall Street Journal, we're going to look into what Warner actually expects from Superman to be considered a success, DC wanting Kevin Feige to join, and what the future plans for the DCU actually are. All that and more in today's video. Before we begin, I wanted to say that this video will not contain spoilers for Superman. We know at the time of this recording, it's technically opening weekend and a lot of the public hasn't seen it yet. Me and Zach, the other guy on this channel, saw it a few days ago. If you're interested to know our spoiler-free thoughts on the film, link is in the description. We have a lot of thoughts on the film and we'll be making videos for the next week about the movie, so give us a sub if you're interested. Alright, so the Wall Street Journal posted up an article detailing some behind-the-scenes information of the DCU. We heard snippets, but there's really some interesting stuff in here. Now, while the Rotten Tomatoes score is actually pretty big, a lot of people were watching Superman's like a hawk when the review embargo for the movie dropped, and while being critically lauded is great, the studio cares a little bit more about another statistic: the money. According to reports, Superman needs to hit 500 million globally to be considered a success. That's not just for bragging rights, that's the internal target Warner Bros. Set. It's the minimum needed to show investors and the studio that DC is finally on the right track. Just a $500 million that says, hey, this works, people are showing up. And here's the interesting part. The cast and crew seem aware of that pressure. James Gunn, David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan, they're all doing the press rounds, and you can kind of feel that everyone really needs this movie to work. Even David Corenswet is really stressed that the film needs to do well, that he's just gonna go turn off his phone and play Legos for the opening weekend.
Whatever the collector's edition Millennium Falcon Lego that my wife got me as a wrap gift when I finished Superman, and it's still sitting in my closet at home, and I saw it the other day and I thought, maybe that's what I'll do on opening weekend. I'll just turn my phone off and do this enormous Lego for 2 days.
This film is the launch point for the DCU, and everyone involved knows that it has to land. Now, me personally, I think it's gonna do great. There's hype around the movie that I haven't really seen in years, maybe since Spider-Man No Way Home, and people are optimistic. Is the movie a perfect 10 out of 10? Of course not. Is it fun and does it do the job? I think so, and I think it's gonna do well, and it makes me definitely confident for the future of DC. Speaking of, the article also sheds light on something really interesting that Warner Bros. Tried to do after Justice League flopped back in 2017. Warner Bros., of course, panicked. They started looking around for someone who could fix DC films, and one of the people that they reportedly approached was Kevin Feige. Yes, they tried to apparently poach Kevin Feige to help steer DC. The guy who basically defined what a superhero franchise looks like in modern Hollywood. Warner Bros. Apparently wanted him to jump ship. Unsurprisingly, he said no, probably because he was knee-deep into setting the stage for Infinity War and Endgame at the time. Not the first time a franchise wanted Feige to jump ship. Reportedly, Disney wanted him to also produce a Star Wars movie. The article even mentions talks with The Rock, and if you remember the whole Black Adam part of the DCEU, you'll remember that he was really intent on centering the universe around his character and to eventually fight Superman. Which, as someone who actually likes DC, does not sound great. Of course, Black Adam failed at the box office, and those talks immediately died. Then Gunn and Safran stepped in. Two guys, one handling creative and the other handling business, reporting directly to David Zaslav with no studio interference in between, tasked with making sense of the brand that's been on life support for nearly a decade. And so far, I think they're doing a pretty good job. I'm the most hopeful I've been for DC in a while. Now let's talk about something that didn't happen, but maybe should have. Back in 2022, a script was being written for a Black Superman movie written by author and journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates. The story would have taken place during the Civil Rights Movement, offering a grounded and socially relevant take on the Superman mythos. That project was quietly shelved. Now why? Well, according to the Wall Street Journal, insiders said that it was deemed too woke by David Zaslav. And that's kind of heartbreaking, because whatever your politics are, it's hard to deny that this was a story worth telling. A culturally resonant Superman grounded in real-world history? That's bold, that's different, and that's kind of the storytelling that DC could have used to distinguish itself. Now, to be fair, this was not a James Gunn decision. It was a Zaslav-era call before DC Studios even existed in its current form, but people inside DC said it could return as part of the Elseworlds slate. I'd really be interested to see this kind of take. Aside from the main timeline that the DC Universe is currently trying to establish, Gunn really established DC Elseworlds for a reason, and I think that this would be the perfect kind of story for that label. But we really won't know until the future. I really do hope it's made. Now, here's the last big point from this article, and maybe the most promising one, is that DC Studios now has an actual clear production plan. Going forward, the studio wants to release 2 live-action films per year, 1 animated project per year, and maybe a TV show here or there. Now that's a manageable, focused output. Of course, DC saw what Marvel tried with their increased output and how that kind of burned them out and hurt the MCU as a whole. So loosely sticking to this release plan will at least make sure that DC has consistent releases. Additionally, they want to establish all the big heroes in their own films, and then round out the Justice League in their own crossover event, which is a great thing to work towards, and a reason I think that they're in the right step. My biggest thing with cinematic universe movies is that we need several core characters to really level the universe around. I know that James Gunn said that the movies would be their own thing. To make the universe trick work, you still need a core group of characters that will pop up, so that the audience actually cares about them. The core group in a cinematic universe is a fulcrum. Everything revolves around them. Am I saying that they need to pop up in every single movie? No, and James Gunn is making sure that that's not the case either. A very light spoiler, but we do see a character show up that's been seen before in the DCU. It's a brief cameo, but that's all the audience in my theater needed to laugh out loud. It doesn't take much time to remind us that they are there, and it just makes the universe feel more cohesive. So if we look at what Marvel did right the first time, and then what they did wrong post-Endgame, it's because there was no group that we could identify with. But from both sides, it looks like they're making those corrections, so I think we might finally be out of this comic book movie slump. But anyways, that's all I have to say on this for today, but before I go, I want to answer one of your mailbag questions. As always, leave a comment down below with the hashtag mailbag for us to answer in a future video. This one comes to us from Shripadreddy4852. Hashtag mailbag. What are your thoughts on David Fincher's Squid Game 3? I'm not excited for the US spin-off Squid Game, but David Fincher is one of the best directors to exist. So what are your views? Thank you for your question, Shripadreddy. So, for those of you who don't know or don't really care for the ending of Squid Game Season 3, right now is your spoiler warning. Okay, still here? Good. Season 3 has one of the characters from the original show going to the United States, where they see Cate Blanchett recruiting a person to participate in another Squid Game. The audience heavily assumes that this is a nod to the spin-off American version of Squid Game that David Fincher is in talks to create. I'll admit, I wanted to do this idea as a full video, but honestly my thoughts can be summed up as this. I think he's a fantastic director to handle this kind of story given his filmography, and like Shripadreddy, I think that he's one of the top directors out there. I'm really looking forward to him directing the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel. However, in terms of adapting Squid Game to a US audience is a little redundant. Squid Game's popularity was massive, enough that it was nearly impossible to be online anywhere without hearing about it. So really, what are you adapting for? The show will probably retread old ideas that the previous show has already covered. Capitalism putting people in a twisted game, how people can lose their humanity in the pursuit of riches, all that's been done before. I think that David Fincher knows that going in, so he'll probably try to differentiate it. Will it be popular? Sure. Netflix will market the hell out of it, especially if they can get a couple of more Hollywood A-listers to join the roster like Cate Blanchett. So it's obvious where they're going, but do they need to do it? Not really, but then again, Netflix will want to milk the popularity of this thing until people just don't care anymore. But I'll keep an eye on it. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.